Mike, and this is my van. This is a 1978 Chevy van, short wheelbase, full panel, which means it doesn't have windows. A few custom features like thrush side pipes from the 70s, vintage Krager wheels, air spoiler, fender flares. The back features velour bedding, padded walls, and vintage wooden beads. Wooden lamps. (2018) Dodge Indigo Blue. A going door. Sun visor. Vintage hood scoop. A backdated grill from 1977 to 1978, so square headlights and plastic. Front air dam. The engine is a 383 stroker from Blueprint, 440 horsepower and 480 pounds of torque, matted to a 700 R4 transmission with 373 posi gears. I live in Northern Virginia, and today it is 97 degrees outside. And 102 in the van. And a custom stereo. And not even Cheech and Chong can keep my van cool. So today we're going to talk about the Vintage Air system. I installed the Vintage Air system in my van several years ago, maybe 4 or 5, from the catalog, and it's gone a couple of transformations vent-wise. So this is the final version of what I did to the van. I have what is called the Vintage Air Monster Box. This appears in the catalog near the end of all of the options. In fact, it's just a side note. But this Monster Box system is what is needed to heat large areas. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. The Monster Truck unit is a cool-only unit, so you're not going to get any heat. Comes with some instructions here. Basically, you're going to get the Monster Box evaporator, the ductwork, some hoses, some vents, and a hose kit. Typically, these would go behind the seat of a large car. This plenum would draw in air, send it through the evaporator, and then push it out the ducts sitting on top of the dash. So the intake and the outflow air would be all in the same place. Get some measurements of the product and also a sketch of how a car might do this. I'm going to walk you through some of this here in a minute, but actually, you know, you basically start your compressor and all the hoses have to run to the back to the evaporator and then all the way back up to the compressor for your high side and low side. Pages come with all kinds of templates to cut out holes in your dash, switches in the front, little directional things, and a wiring diagram, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Let's start up front where the wiring takes place. Let's start the cooling system with a condenser. You got a Monster Box, you got to have a Monster condenser. This is on page 90 of the catalog, and this is the Superflow condenser for dual air or high capacity systems. We'll get to the dual air in a moment. This condenser under this grill measures 16 inches tall by 27 inches wide by 1 inch thick, and it's the largest one you can get. So let's start there. Now we're under the passenger side of the van. You can see the hoses up there have been run from the compressor and the dryer, just barely on the arm there. I've got one more bracket to put up there to elevate these hoses above, but it's all right for now, for the video. Got a blue wire, you notice here, that's the trigger for the evaporator in the back here. So you're gonna look at 2 hoses and the wire. Got a couple hoses in my frame, so we'll run through there. Don't want to put any hard bends in the hose. I drilled another hole, send it through. And the other one on the other side. The wire is going to run along this channel over to the evaporator and up, while these hoses continue on over the drive shaft with bracketing. You never want these to fall down. Do not use zip ties. And then through the frame, these were some factory holes I was able to use. And then up into the floor of the van. You're gonna need to drill two holes. And those will go up into our hidden evaporator compartment along with the blue wire. The only other hole you're gonna need to drill is a drip hose hole. And this is where the condensation will come out of the evaporator. It collects water. It should be tipped back in the back, and we'll go over that when we get back inside. But you definitely don't want water tipped the opposite way into your interior, or you're gonna flood it, or the water will reach the coils, the electrical, and you will burn your system out. When it comes to all of this wiring, I'll admit it was the most complicated thing I had seen, because you're wiring a trinary switch in. The instructions are fairly clear, but there's a YouTube video by Affordable Street Rods that clearly explains this. I think the guy's name is Rex. And the video from Vintage Air, it helps, they actually diagram on a board how all this works, but it's very helpful. But here we go with my version. Of course, we realize this is coming from the blue wire over there at the trinary. This is the ground, and the white wire comes out of the same pin. So they do that because they want you to ground also the engine block switch. For when the temp gauge reaches 180, it will also trigger the ground, setting your fans on. The other black wire you see tied in here runs into the dash, and I actually have a manual switch I can flick on and turn the fans on earlier than 180 if I want to. Or if I don't have the air conditioner on and I want to run the fans in traffic, I can do that as well. So there's three ways these fans turn on: through the relay switch. Then you have this wire, which is going up to the 12 volt switched, and then you have another red wire that is the 12 volt ignition. So you've got two of those for the power. Both of these are on ignition. They are fused. There is a there is a circuit breaker, a 40 amp circuit breaker that runs from the evaporator in the back here, and I'll show you that in a minute. So you've got to have a 40 amp circuit breaker before you wire it hot too, and that's pretty much all of the wiring goes. This is a 30 amp up here, and this is what's hooked into the fan relays. And just so there's no confusion on this trinary switch, think of the blue wires as ground wires. This actually goes in. I hooked a green wire on it to wire it to the frame. The other blue wire runs over to the relay switch on the other side. The black and green wire, think of those as power wires. One of these is going to run to the compressor to turn the switch on, and there's one on the bottom that runs to the evaporator in the back, and it triggers that. So that's what I wanted to clarify there. Also, again, the Affordable Street Rod video with Rex showing you how to diagram this out, and the Vintage Air video are great resources. Inside you can see the toggle switch I've mounted below the dash, and it is a key on operation. I can turn that on and you can hear the fans running. What I've done here is I have taken the factory Vintage Air switch and I have put a retro radio dial on the switch. So this is a 3-speed switch, and it's there in the dash to look like it was factory. This is a horn button, and then of course the toggle switch for there. Now let's get into the box. So this is what the Vintage Air comes with here. These of course are dryer hoses. You can buy black 4-inch flexible hoses, but I chose these for a couple of reasons that I'll tell you about in a moment. When I built the van, I had all of this planned out to put a inverter and a battery to light this black light poster through a series of black lights that are up in the console, and whatever else I might have needed. Maybe I was going to put a spare house battery if I were camping. I could run some power or some shore power to an AC window unit that I see some guys in vans put on their vans. Inside this box, is the trunk unit. And this opening here is where this plenum would go for the intake. And then instead of the two rubber hoses connecting to the vents that you saw in the kit, they look like that. These would sit on the dash. This big intake would sit in the trunk. This would draw the air in. You could cut your seat out. You could cut this down and lower, have this intake on your seat, and then it would shoot out the vents. They recommend that this air circulates inside your car. They also recommend insulation behind the wheel. You want to keep something cool, you've got to insulate it. So this van is completely got Dynamat in it or Cool It, and that's the best insulation that I found so far. The last thing you want to do is cool your van and then have a bunch of heat sink come inside, because it is a toaster oven in here sometimes. All right, so I just didn't need that, and what I've done is I haven't really permanently put an intake duct on there, and I'm not sure I'm going to. If I did, it would probably be here. But right now what I'm doing is I'm using this only to go to car shows, and I put all of this stuff in here, and then I put a seat cover on top, and nobody even knows it's here. Well, you say, how do you get the air conditioning up to the front? I'll get to that in a moment, but let me pull these back out and show you some of the things we referenced before. So what makes a monster box a monster box? Basically, it's these two fans. All of the other AC units that Vintage Air has is one fan. And that's pretty cool if you've got a C10. You're only trying to cool 2 or 3 faces at the most. It's a small area, easy to cool. You don't need a big, evaporator to do that. But back here in this van, this is what was referenced to the dual air conditioning stuff in the first place. I don't know if you can tie this into another unit, maybe a Gen 1 or 5 or one of the small ones in the dash, and put this in the back. Some of you experts may be able to do that, but I can tell you that this blows enough air to divide these two fans for the front and the back. And I'm going to demonstrate that in a minute. These are 4-inch ducts, and the other units are 2 or 2.5 through the 3 portholes in the front. And so that's why this thing just generates hurricane force winds. Since I've got a high power stereo back here, I already had a power with an 0 gauge. And then I've got the trigger switch here that you saw run under the van. Back in the back here are the 2 holes, and the drainage is in the back. You have to kind of thread that through and then set this unit in there, I believe. So that's what's going on there. Then the wires are in a grate harness. They run up under the carpet, up under the dash. There are 2 or 3 relay switches, because here is the red power line to the unit, and then the orange and the yellow run to the switch to turn it on, and the white is grounded to the frame. So the wiring is pretty straightforward as well. This is a temperature gauge. You can set this for cooler or hotter. And I just replaced the condenser on this van, which is why I've got all this wiring out right now. So the condenser went out on me. It was squeaking really, really bad, so we just put a new condenser in it. And so I just put this lettering on there so I would know that clockwise is colder. Hey, Vintage Air, it would help if you put that on the switch. This switch was also mounted upside down for some reason, and it shows it upside down in the diagram. Don't know why, but I unscrewed it and put it right side up so I could turn the dial. Okay. So we're rolling to the car show. It's 97 degrees. It's a hot day. I had this console built from an old throwaway couch. This is one of those things that sits between the 2 chairs. I had it reupholstered to match the van. And how it works for me is I put some quick connects back to the HVAC system. You go down to Home Depot and you connect your vents on. And just like that, we are ready to cool. These aren't going anywhere. We can drive around. The hoses are perfectly flexed and not crimped. The reason I also chose these is they compress back down into the box. So when they're not in use, they go right back in the box. decompress a little bit, better than the rubber hoses. And then this seat cushion goes back on top and nobody even knows there's AC in here. The magic happens in this console because in the wintertime I removed this console. It's not bolted down. And these are also HVAC exterior vents, and they're on a swivel. You can swivel these, point these at your face. There's nothing like having AC pointed lower than your head. So you got them in the face. When these come in the ports, sorry about that. When these come in the ports, they roll into here and they roll up to there throughout the through the top, driver's side and passenger side. That's all that's in here are just flex hose ports. You'll notice in the back, I've left this open. I have some options for this, and Vintage Air makes, like I said, they come with these ducts, and they have a lot of options for stainless steel vents. My first thought was I would actually vent those in through the dash, but I decided just to make this whole operation mobile. So now the cover's back on, everything's hidden, and there are a lot of options you can go with for what I've done here. Like I said, we're just breaking new ground. I haven't seen another video, especially for a van. But this console allows me to take out the console because my seats are on swivel bases, and I can turn these seats around and face into the van, and sometimes I do that during car shows. If I were to do this over again, and had a couple of limousine chairs here instead of the bed, I actually have a Y-splitter that's over by the wall, and I could split the hoses as they go inside. I can take one of these and run it to a couple of vents here, so I could do either horizontal or a portrait. And these are put on an angle so that if you put them here, they would actually blow up. And then you could direct the vent to the passenger faces. So they would be at this level, about the same level as these, and that's plenty, believe me. When I fire this up, you're gonna see. So I've left space in there to duct one of these 4-inch blowers into the back. So this would create a rear AC situation. I just haven't done that. Or if you really had great fabricating skills, there was enough room underneath the van to go down in the floor, duct it over the frame or through the frame, and you could actually pop it up inside here. But I don't recommend doing that kind of crazy stuff because the doghouse has to come out to service the engine. So this is why I've made this mobile. But if you could create an up the wall panel and hide it, you know, with a couple of posts, you could get it up in the ceiling, and then you could use these factory vents. You could paint them to match your interior, and you could stick them up here. You'd have two for the passengers and two for the driver and passenger front seat. So that might have been an option if this wasn't a show van and I don't have people in the back. So that's what's going on there. All right, we're back in the van now. It's time to fire it up and see how she goes. The compressor has only been run for 5 minutes, but we're just gonna fire it up and go for it. I'm gonna set the switch on speed number 3. Got my fuzzy man here to show you a little bit of airflow here. He's got his air blowing. It's like sitting in front of a leaf blower full of ice. All right, we've got VFR gauge hitting under there. Got cold air blowing out of the vent. And we've got a Ryobi infrared. So let's take the outside temperature here. See what kind of reading we get. We are 98, 97. All right, now we're gonna go in here. Give this a little bit of a taste. 71. Gas. Down to 68. 64, 63. the final analysis of the Monster Box. This vent thermometer is pegged at about 5 idle. Got a little bit lower on the highway, but in the final tally, it is 90 degrees up here on the dash, and a 40 degree difference in temperature, 45 or 35, is a bit difference. And that thermometer was about 95 when I left the house to run down the street for just a couple minutes, try to generate a little bit more cooler air from the compressor. But the breeze that's coming out of here is significantly more than my F-150, probably twice, and so you do get the wind chill factor. So you probably are cooling about 45 degrees in real life terms. I mean, I will be turning this down. In fact, I have turned it down when I'm riding to a car show or something, because it just is a lot of cold air. So if you're looking for a way to cool a large volume like a large truck or SUV or even a van, I can recommend the Monster Box to do that. And if you pull a project where you actually vent your vents to the back, I'd be happy to see the results. So what's the end result? Do I have the world's coolest van? It's hard to say unless I pull up to somebody else's van. We turn on air conditioners and throw a thermometer in there, and that's never going to happen. Here's the gauge you can go by. You can print out a universal AC list here. And this, according to this, at 95 degrees, between 86 and 95, which it was in my case, and above 50% humidity, I should be getting temperatures blowing at 61 degrees out of the vent. 61 degrees is what I was blowing, but this sheet is for factory-specific air conditioning systems. Mine came out of a catalog. It's universal fit. It'll fit station wagons, 49, 50 Mercuries, and vans, because keep in mind, the run from the compressor, 7 little cylinders in there, is pushing, in my case, 10 feet of hose back to the evaporator and 10 feet back to the compressor. So I'm no engineer, but maybe we've lost a little pressure. My gauges did not exactly match up to what these pressure gauges was. I should have been, according to the list, between 32 and 47 on the low side, and the high side should have been 160 and 213. I was close to those, but not perfect. You can start messing with pressure gauges, or you can go by what Vintage Air says you should have. And it says here to only add 28.8 ounces of refrigerant to the system. Again, it's a universal system. If you follow these guidelines, you will produce the results specified on the average chart. So the big thing is without all the gauges and vent temperature monitors, vans are a little bit tricky in the respect that there's cast iron and aluminum engine, and I have headers, and there's only 1-inch gap between the headers and the opening in the van and the fiberglass shell that has a 1/4-inch coolant reflective material, and then your ankle's sitting 2 inches away from that. But once this air conditioning is turned on and you actually have 61 degrees blowing, you actually, that air filters, the way I have it situated, from the torso, from my head to the torso, and air flows, bounces off the window and circulates all over the place because I have both motors focused up in the front seats. If I were to take, in my particular case, a sheet of plastic or something and cover the opening of the bed area, I would eliminate 2/3 of the cooling area and could probably drop the temperature significantly in the van. If you choose to go ahead and split that 2 fans to the front and the other 2 fans for the back, I'd love to see it and see how the results were. We're in the experimental phases. This has never been posted on YouTube for the Monster Box. If you have one, I'd like to see your results. Otherwise, I have to say, let all the gauges, all of the thermometers, all the infrareds, when I turn the air conditioner on, the van is cold. It's a pleasure to drive. And you know that you're cooling when you don't think about it's hot in here. And so when you can fire up your ride, turn the air conditioning on, and you don't feel hot, you're gonna cruise down the highway in comfort and style. You just might have the world's coolest van.